Dresden-Elbe Valley, the impact of development and modernisation in losing UNESCO Heritage status by Emma Vill. The UNESCO World Heritage Committee represents an international attempt to identify, preserve and protect cultural and natural heritage sites that are considered as having outstanding universal value to humanity. Inscriptions to the World Heritage List happens through a process that occurs during the annual World Heritage Committee meeting. Experts from UNESCO's official advisory bodies, the International Council on Museums and Sites, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature present technical evaluations, but any final decisions are made by the state parties that are elected to the World Heritage Committee. At the time of writing, the World Heritage Convention currently has 1,154 sites on its outstanding World Heritage List. For a site to be included on the World Heritage List, it must meet one or more of the selection criteria, as well as being of outstanding universal value. In addition to these criteria and being of outstanding universal value, the authenticity, integrity, management, and protection of such sites are also important considerations. It therefore means that if any of these factors are affected or cannot be controlled and monitored, such a site would lose its place within this list. This is officially the case for 3 sites that have been delisted as of April 2022, leading to them losing their World Heritage status, as well as 52 sites that are currently classed as in danger of losing their heritage status. The 3 sites that have been delisted are Dresden-Elbe Valley, which was delisted in 2009, Liverpool Maritime Mercantile City, which was delisted in 2021, and Oman's Arabian Oryx Sanctuary, which was delisted in 2007. It has been stated that since 1975, the World Heritage Convention has allowed for an expanding system of international cooperation to promote and protect the heritage sites that have since been added onto the list. Jean Micitelli, the former French ambassador for UNESCO, emphasised that UNESCO gave World Heritage a concrete and doctrinal framework. It is also being considered by some scholars as the leading instrument for the protection of such exceptional global heritage. Since its creation, there have been varying arguments as to the benefit of heritage sites having a place on the World Heritage List. For individual countries, it has been recognised that there is a positive correlation between the number of properties a country has on the list and its prominence within the World Heritage system. The larger the amounts of sites had on the list by an individual country allows them to have the opportunity to gain greater political recognition and influence on decisions affecting World Heritage. Frey and Steiner have observed that the UNESCO conventions tend to benefit the more affluent countries in comparison to poorer nations. The gaining of UNESCO status instantly gives the site both a national and international status that the site may not have had previously. As a result of this, it has been argued that being on the UNESCO Heritage List is highly desirable, bringing prominence as well as greater economic revenue. In cultural tourism literature, it has been mentioned that authenticity is a significant concept to many visitors in addition to the UNESCO criteria. Tisdale and Wilson have found that the UNESCO label has a complementary effect when analysing Australian tourist sites that hold this status. This, however, has been criticised as a Disneyfication and over-commercialisation of such sites, especially those within poorer regions. Such commercialisation can also lead to a growing need for development around the site, such as hotel accommodation, in addition to opening the area to economic opportunities, such as selling souvenirs, food outlets and restaurants. This development in turn can lead to the loss of the status, as it goes against some of the criteria that gained the site its UNESCO status initially. The loss of the area's authenticity would come as a result of the development and commercialisation. Other scholars have been critical of the benefits of a site holding UNESCO status. Bertocchini highlights that the UNESCO status acts as a commodification of culture, whilst others such as Deramo have asserted that UNESCO status leads to the imminent failure of a city or place. It can therefore be argued that losing this status can sometimes be more beneficial to the site and the surrounding area than maintaining it. This paper will explore the impact of development and modernisation in relation to the loss of UNESCO heritage status. This will be done through considering different sites throughout the world. It will take a particular focus on Dresden-Elbe Valley as a case study and refer to the city of Liverpool and its historic docks. These are 2 of the 3 sites that have lost their UNESCO heritage status. as well as mentioning Derwent Valley Mills and its difficulties in development whilst maintaining UNESCO heritage status. Despite the original aims of the UNESCO listing to identify and protect sites of outstanding value, the UNESCO status has become a marketing tool to attract visitors. This can be seen as a positive as it can help increase income to a country or area through tourism. Tourists may bring greater economic fortune to communities and areas that may have previously received little attention. However, it must be noted that this increase in tourism can lead to the loss of the unique local culture. UNESCO status can also take the planning and control of the area away from the surrounding community, as demonstrated in both Dresden and Liverpool. When considering UNESCO heritage status, the local population and the needs of the surrounding community must also be considered, which is why sometimes it is more suitable for areas to develop, thus losing its UNESCO status. It has been stated by von Schorlemer that maintenance and protection of such sites, as well as the need for development and modernization for the surrounding communities, does raise concerns to the compliance of such treaties. This sentiment is furthered by Edith Brown Weiss, who maintains that transnational elites may feel comfortable with decision-making at the international level, but local communities may be hostile to such international institutions. In the case of cultural landscapes such as Dresden Elbe Valley and Liverpool Maritime Mercantile City, Sophie Labarde has criticised the lack of coordination between the inscription and management of World Heritage sites, as throughout the process of nomination, inscription, monitoring, and then later removal for both sites, there was no clarity or consistency. It has been noted elsewhere by Lee, Bu and Kai that the difficulty between heritage protection and development may be more prominent in developing countries. Kaust and Vecco have postulated that UNESCO may in fact further burden the unsustainability of World Heritage unless specific arrangements have been put in place in terms of management to avoid such conflicts as those which occurred in Dresden Elbe Valley and Liverpool. It can therefore be seen that although UNESCO attempts to protect such sites, the reality is that for some sites UNESCO has stopped the generation of other forms of income due to the lack of freedom in development had by such sites. According to the Budapest Declaration, the UNESCO mission is to promote an appropriate balance between conservation, sustainability and development. This mission, though, seems to be very difficult for many sites to achieve and maintain, as development can go against the wishes of UNESCO as it can lead to overdevelopment. Liverpool Maritime Mercantile City is an example of this. From the late 18th to the early 20th centuries, Liverpool was known as the second city of empire, but since the dismantling of global empires and change in international shipping practices, Liverpool has ceased to be a maritime mercantile city. Consequence to this, the nomination of Liverpool for inscription to the World Heritage List was a way to culturally promote and economically develop and recover its world city status. It was due to its history as a world port city, alongside its innovations in construction, port management systems, and technology, that it was inscribed as a result of their outstanding universal value. The main aim of the City Council within this example was to develop Liverpool in order to create economic prosperity. Gaining UNESCO heritage status was just one way in doing so. In turn, this led to the city having limitations on how else it could develop, as the UNESCO status put a stop to other developments, such as the planning proposal for Liverpool Waters, the creation of which promised a massive job creation and the desired economic growth. UNESCO heritage had not had a large beneficial impact on Liverpool and its local communities, as it did not solve the high unemployment levels, so therefore should not be maintained, as it did little in providing solutions to the issues within the city. Reports from 2021 demonstrate that Derwent Valley Mills is a location that, for a period, became at risk of losing its status due to overdevelopment also. The risk came forward because of a plan to build a 17-story apartment block opposite the historic silk mill. It has been argued that the apartments would threaten the mill's global significance, as they would be the tallest buildings in Derby. Although this is something that would greatly benefit the city of Derby itself, UNESCO does not see this development as justifiable, as it is too close to the mill's location. UNESCO heritage status, therefore, is site-specific to how much benefit it can provide. Unfortunately for some sites, though, The gaining of UNESCO World Heritage status brings more negatives than positives. Having such a status puts large restrictions upon an individual site, and so it becomes more beneficial for the site to lose this unique status in order for the surrounding areas and the site itself to make the changes and developments needed. This notion will be discussed further within the next section in greater detail, focusing on the case study of Dresden-Elbe Valley, which lost its heritage status as a result of overdevelopment. The inclusion of cultural landscapes onto the World Heritage List is challenging. This was especially the case for Dresden-Elbe Valley. It has been noted amongst UNESCO members that cultural landscapes such as Dresden and Liverpool docks are living entities unlike museum pieces. Change must be allowed whilst also respecting the universal value of the sites. This paper demonstrates that for some World Heritage sites, in particular Liverpool and Dresden, change was a necessity in order for development. Dresden itself has developed over centuries, gradually evolving and changing. It was careful planning over time that has helped to retain and preserve the outstanding features of the landscape. This legacy of the past, though, was also seen in turn by UNESCO as what limited the change available to Dresden-Elbe Valley. As indicated by Armin von Bogdandy and Diana Zacharias, the behaviour of the communities affected by the change to Dresden-Elbe Valley and the supervising authorities demonstrate a clear uncertainty regarding the relevance of the World Heritage Convention. The city of Dresden is situated in a valley on the river Elbe, near the border of the Czech Republic. Since 1485, the city has developed to become an important cultural, economic and political centre. For a period it was known as the Florence of Elbe due to its architectural and artistic notoriety. During the middle of the 19th century, Dresden developed as a major manufacturing centre, and today it is one of the fastest growing cities in Germany. It is one of the greenest cities in Europe, with over 62% of the city being green areas and forests, in particular the Elbe Meadows, which is a key component of this landscape. It was across these 20-kilometre meadows that the Waldschlossenbrücke was constructed. The project to construct this bridge was not new. It had been a constant feature in planning since the 19th century, as it was viewed as essential for a cross-river connection to be made between the northern and southern districts to the east of the city centre, in order to reduce congestion within the centre and lighten the vehicle load on Dresden's historic bridges. The building of the bridge had only been delayed due to World War II, as well as a discord between funding, planning and politics. The Waldschlossenbrücke is a four-lane bridge which is 636 metres long and forms a level carriageway at an elevation that suits the embankments on either side of the river and avoids the periodic flooding of the meadows. It is an interpretation of the historic arch bridges of Dresden and combines bicycle lane, pedestrian path, road and tramway. As a result of this, it has been argued by Gaillard and Rodwell that the bridge is conservative. UNESCO's justification for moving the site onto the list of World Heritage in Danger was that the construction would cause irreversible damage to the values and integrity of the project, as the bridge intrudes upon the core area of the cultural landscape. This conclusion was made during the World Heritage Committee session in Lithuania, which took place from the 8th to the 16th of July. It was in the World Heritage Committee's 31st session in Christchurch, New Zealand, that the decision for the site being delisted was made. It was made under the justification that, in the event that construction of the bridge has an irreversible impact on the outstanding universal value of the property. Although there were negotiations made between UNESCO and the Dresden authorities, these were unsuccessful. The only suitable alternative that would have been accepted by UNESCO was a tunnel, but this also would have had a negative impact on the environment and would have caused greater disturbances to the riverbanks. Although it may have dealt with the visual issues, it would have had a harsher ecological impact. In the case of Dresden, for the first time ever in Europe, the local government were prepared to openly confront the decision of UNESCO. The former Premier of Saxony, George Milbrandt, even stated that the loss of the World Heritage title could be coped with, although it remains a contentious subject within civil society within Dresden. The loss of the World Heritage status appears to have made no impact upon tourism or property value. In the case of Dresden-Elbe Valley, although the building of the bridge came at a cost, it appears that overall this cost has not been too severe. Economically, Dresden has seen no loss as there have been no reports of the loss of World Heritage status affecting tourism numbers or the property value of the area. This example shows the inflexible nature of UNESCO in relation to its criteria and negotiations, therefore demonstrating that in this case, for the benefit of the city, its population, and other areas of historical significance, it was more beneficial to develop and build the bridge than maintain its UNESCO heritage status. It must be noted that UNESCO heritage status and what UNESCO stands for is very beneficial to public heritage throughout the world, but that for the cases mentioned, the benefits were greatly outweighed by the restrictions. The changing nature of modern-day life, particularly in the areas mentioned, is an important factor that local councils and governments have to consider when developing areas, especially those close to World Heritage sites. UNESCO status can be counterproductive as the commercialization that it brings can in turn lead to overdevelopment of the area as a way to suit tourist demand, which then later leads to the loss of such status. Therefore, losing UNESCO World Heritage status can sometimes be more beneficial. This was the case for both Liverpool and Dresden, as UNESCO status took away the freedoms of planning, building and developing the area. Especially with the case of Liverpool, the status provided very little to the city in return for the constraints placed upon it. The needs of the local communities and surrounding areas have to be measured when making such considerations, and in both cases, these needs outweighed the UNESCO heritage status. For Liverpool, the main focus was to develop economically in order to help the masses of unemployment seen within the city, and for Dresden, the bridge enabled the longevity of the historic buildings, the reduction of congestion within the city centre, and better transport connections throughout the city of Dresden. Although it is an unfortunate event in both cases that these sites had to be delisted, in both cases these were the correct measures as the changes made have greatly benefited both areas. It is important to recognise that such sites may need to change, especially within the context of urban development, especially for those living there. In order to stop more repeat cases of Dresden and Liverpool, from the very start of status listing, there should be active site management so that other sites can find a balance between modernisation, tradition, conservation and urban development. Thank you for listening.